Hi, I kind of accidentally became one of the world's leading experts in combination restaurants. And this is a Dunkin' Jimmy Robbins, a combination Dunkin' Donuts, Jimmy John's, and Baskin Robbins.
And it's one of several new combination restaurants that have been popping up around the country that feel like they're getting more and more unhinged. So in this episode, I'll be checking out the ultra rare Dunkin' Jimmy Robbins, quadruple combination Jamba Juice, Annie Ann's, Cinnabon, and Carvel, and a never before seen Buffalo Dunkin' Robbins. I've made quite a few videos about places like combination Taco Bell and Pizza Hut, IHOPPLEBEE's, and even the mythical Taco Hut. And I think we're at an interesting point in the history of combination restaurants, an inflection point, if you will. On the one hand, you've got Yum Brands, who was previously the king of combo restaurants, and they're actively offering franchisees financial incentives to decouple restaurants like KFC, Taco Bell. It's like how the creators of Jurassic Park realized that what they had created was far too powerful. And then on the other hand, you've got parent companies of IHOP, Applebee's, and the other restaurants I'm visiting in this video, and they're seemingly ramping up their combination restaurant operations. Two very different strategies from major players in the restaurant industry. And at the end of the episode, I'll talk a little bit more about where things are headed and which strategy I think is going to pay off. So because of my expertise, people keep tagging me in the comments of this TikTok about the Dunkin' Jimmy Robbins. They summoned me.
So I'm here now. All right, let's go inside.
At combo restaurants, I like to come up with a portmanteau or a combined name, and that's largely inspired by how fun it is to say Taco Hut. And in the comments of that TikTok, you've got people saying stuff like Dunkin' Jimmy Robbins, Jimmy Dunkin' Robbins, and this one comment that says, not the Duskin' Jobbins. That last one's hilarious, but I think I'm going to refer to it as the Dunkin' Jimmy Robbins. If this is the first video of mine you've seen about combination restaurants, you should know that I have a whole classification system for these things. Basically, the more combined, the better. And some of the best examples are Taco Hut and IHOPPLEBEE's, because they have the same staff, a shared menu, or the same counter that you'd order from. The further right you get on this scale, the more things kind of start to go off the rails. Like, is it considered combined if it's in a basketball arena? What if they're both attached to a gas station? I'm not a huge fan of those types of combos unless it's for a joke, like the Taco Bell urgent care combo I went to earlier this season. So when it comes to the Dunkin' Jimmy Robbins, the exterior definitely has branding for all three. But this sign that says open inside made me a tiny bit worried that the inside was just for Jimmy John's. And maybe the Dunkin' and Baskin Robbins were drive-through only. But fortunately, once you get inside, it's clear that all three of these establishments are sharing the same space with a shared seating area. There are two counters. The one on the left is Jimmy John's, and the one on the right is a shared counter for Dunkin' and Baskin Robbins, so I did end up having to place two orders. Interestingly, if you look on Google Street View, before it became a Dunkin' Jimmy Robbins, it was just a Dunkin' Robbins, so I'm curious why they didn't just make one combined counter. Maybe so that you can serve two customers at once, so that the menu doesn't get too overwhelming for someone that's just in there for coffee or just in there for a sandwich. I don't know for sure though. Similarly, I checked online and you can't place orders together. You'd have to place an order for Jimmy John's and a separate order for Dunkin', and I believe a third order if you also wanted Baskin Robbins. I was also curious about the drive-thru, and after some investigating, I discovered that you can place orders for Dunkin' and Baskin Robbins in the drive-thru like normal, and Jimmy John's is available in the drive-thru, but only if you're picking up a mobile order. Like, you can't place an order for Jimmy John's using the drive-thru speaker. And if you look closely, the words drive-thru on the sign are technically only under the logos for Dunkin' and Baskin Robbins, not the Jimmy John's logo. Alright, so naturally I wanted to order something from each of the three restaurants while I was there and make myself kind of a three-course meal. So from Jimmy John's, I ordered a chicken bacon ranch sub combo, and at Dunkin' I got an iced Dunkin' latte, and then at Baskin Robbins I got a cone of Jamocha almond fudge ice cream. One of the biggest criticisms of Yum's combination restaurants were that each of the individual parts were never as good as the standalone locations. Like, for example, if you ordered Taco Bell from a combination KFC Taco Bell, chances are that the Taco Bell food wouldn't be as good as if you had ordered it from a regular Taco Bell. At least that's what people said. So I'm hoping to see if individually these restaurants can hold their own. I feel like the coffee at Dunkin' is pretty plug and play, so relatively hard to mess up, at least with what I'm ordering there. So no complaints from me. I moved on to my main course, which was the toasted sub from JJ's. I haven't had Jimmy John's in years. I'm more of a New Jersey Michaels man myself. So at first glance, this sub looked slightly below average. However, despite looking pretty unappealing and the crust of the bread being a little hard, it actually tasted pretty decent. And then after washing it down with some cherry Coke, I moved on to dessert. As far as ice cream cones go, again, pretty hard to mess this up, so this was pretty solid. I might opt for a different flavor next time, like this Jamocha almond was very almond heavy. But all in all, this was a very pleasant way to end my meal. That is, up until I succumbed to a minor brain freeze. So brain freeze wins this round. And while I was waiting for that to subside, I saw a little bit of the glue from the paper stuck to the cone, and I could not scratch it off. That's probably some sort of edible glue though, right? I mean, it has to be. All right, so I can't say conclusively if this Jimmy John's is any better or worse than a standalone Jimmy John's, or if maybe I'm just not as big of a fan of James Jonathan as I remembered. But I would say that I'm still a fan of this as a triple combo location. Like, I would eat here again. My final test, however, would be a Frankenstein creation. So at each location in this episode, I'll combine foods from each of the restaurants to make a crossover item that doesn't currently exist. From the beginning, this has been one of my biggest gripes with combo restaurants. I don't think enough of them are taking advantage of the unique pairing opportunities that you get with access to 2 menus in the same kitchen. As far as I know, Yum never really did this. And that was the premise of my first video on combo restaurants. Like, what if there actually were novelty crossover items at these places that gave you extra incentive to come check them out? Like, for example, a shrimp cheesy gordita crunch from a combo Long John Silver's and Taco Bell. And then when I finally made it to a Kintaco Hut, I combined ingredients from all 3 to create a chicken pizzerito. When I went to IHOPPLEBEE's, I actually didn't have to come up with anything crazy on my own because their parent company, Dine Brands, is one of the only companies out there that's actively making crossover items on their own. So I was able to order something called a loaded buffalo chicken omelet. And that was actually really good. So at the end of this episode, I'll tell you which of these new crossover creations is my favorite and if any of them are worth trying. For my crossover item at Dunkin' Jimmy Robbins, I started by going to get more napkins because I knew that this was going to be a very messy experience. I didn't want to get too crazy with like lunch meat and ice cream, so my ingredients from Jimmy John's was actually a chocolate chip cookie. And I know you might be thinking a cookie is kind of a cop-out, but in my defense, neither Dunkin' nor Baskin Robbins sells cookies. So in my mind, this feels like fair game. From there, I added cookies and cream ice cream from Baskin Robbins, and then topped it off with a Boston cream donut, which is hands down the best donut at Dunkin'. I always feel absolutely insane making these. Like, I'm sure the people who see me are concerned for my mental state. And what came to mind for me as I looked at it was that meme that's like, every day we stray further from God. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Anyways, I bit in, and just immediately there was a lot going on here. First of all, the cookie did not taste like it was just chocolate chip, and after checking the package, I confirmed that it was in fact a triple chip cookie with white chocolate chips in there. And tasting the flavor from the white chocolate chips plus the flavor from the cream inside the donut, I was like, whoa, maybe I should have gone for a non-filled donut. But despite things getting progressively messier, by the time I got to the middle, I was like, wait, this actually kind of works. All the flavors were a little overwhelming, but it also tasted kind of good. But then by the end, my stomach was telling me that it wasn't all that good. I took a sip of my latte from earlier to wash it down, and that was a mistake. Definitely past the threshold of having too many flavors at that point. Towards the end, I scooped some of my fallen ice cream back on to even out the ratio, because I was basically just holding cookie and donut. And I thought about what I should call this monstrosity. I could go simple, like a dessert sandwich, or a little more complicated, like the Baskin Robbins special. Whatever you want to call it, would I recommend getting this? No, I would not. Despite my best efforts and all the additional napkins, I did manage to get a considerable amount of chocolate on myself, which, full disclosure, is why I was not wearing this sweatshirt in the intro to this video. Before we move on to the next combination, I want to state what may be obvious here, which is that combinations like these are possible because these restaurants are all owned by the same company, which in this case is Inspire Brands. Dunkin' and Baskin Robbins is a pretty common combo. It's one of their greatest hits, but it's when you throw in something like Jimmy John's that things really start to get wild. In addition to Dunkin', Baskin Robbins, and Jimmy John's, Inspire also owns Arby's, Sonic, and Buffalo Wild Wings, which is how we get that cursed Buffalo Dunkin' Robbins combo that we'll visit later in this episode. In the past, I've recommended an Arby's Sonic combination, but now that I think about it, a Sonic Dunkin' combo would go so hard. Kind of a match made in heaven. All right, let's head to the next combo restaurant.
And you might be thinking, Sam, I didn't realize you drove a 2024 Ford Bronco. And I don't. I normally drive a 2006 Toyota 4Runner. But today I get to drive the Bronco thanks to Turo, who's the sponsor of this episode.
Turo is the better way to rent whenever you need a car. With Turo, I can choose the exact car I want, pick it up where it's most convenient for me, and keep it for as long as I need. Like, for example, this Bronco was waiting for me in short-term parking at the airport when I landed, so I was able to skip the rental car lines, and I just snapped a couple pictures, and then I was on my way. And Turo is actually available at over 170 airports across the US and Canada. You may not know this, but I've rented cars with Turo on past past filming trips. When I flew to Alaska on my quest for the best wings, that car was from Turo. When I flew to Australia, I wanted to drive from the Melbourne airport to the 12 Apostles, and that car was from Turo. And renting a car at the airport with Turo is super easy. You can search by airport and then filter by things like vehicle type, number of seats, all-wheel drive, or a specific model. And the nice thing is that this is the exact car you're getting, not just a similar one. And then when you get off the plane, you'll have instructions in the Turo app for where the car is parked. So depending on the airport, you'll pick up your car at designated airport parking lots or garages. And even if you're not traveling soon, you can use Turo for special occasions, or even test driving a vehicle you're interested in learning more about. So scan this QR code or check out the link in the description to get started with Turo, the better way to rent whenever you need a car. And thanks to Turo for sponsoring this adventure. All right, so the parent company for this next combo restaurant is called Go-To Foods, formerly known as Focus Brands. You probably know them for what I'm going to call their big three: Cinnabon, Carvel, and Annie Ann's. These are staples in places like mall food courts, airports, and ballparks, and they're combined really frequently. However, what you may not know is that Go-To Foods also owns Schlotsky's Deli, McAllister's Deli, Moe's Southwest Grill, and Jamba, formerly known as Jamba Juice. Just Levinson, no Gould. And thanks to someone who watches the channel, it recently came to my attention that there's a location that has no fewer than 4 of these concepts under one roof. I've talked at length before about why I think Taco Hut is kind of the quintessential combination restaurant, but even I have to admit, when you raise the stakes from 3 restaurants to 4, it really starts to turn heads. This specific location was located in a little 5-minute city right outside of DC called the National Harbor.
So happy together. I can't see me loving nobody but you.
With 4 different names to work with, there's no shortage of possibilities for portmanteaus. One of my favorites is Carvan's Cinejuice, although once again, Jamba technically dropped the juice, kind of like how Dunkin dropped the donuts from its name. Another good one is Auntie Carvel's Jambabon. And I'll tell you what, Jambabon is just flat out fun to say. There's no denying that.
Auntie Carvel's Jambabon, 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 Jambabon.
Alternatively, some people might just call this location the 4-in-1. Many wise and learned viewers of the channel have asked, why was there never a 5-in-1 Yum location? After all, in the first golden age of combination restaurants, which is what I've dubbed the era from roughly like 2002 to 2010, Yum Brands owned KFC, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, Long John Silver's, and A&W. And you see different variations of those combos, mostly in 2s, very rarely in 3s, but never in 4s or 5s. And the short answer to the question is, I don't know. It does make me sad thinking about what could have been if Yum hadn't sold off Long John Silver's and A&W in 2011. The closest thing I could find to the fabled Taco Hut Silver's and W is this Taco Hut directly across the street from a combination Long John Silver's and A&W just outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico. This is how it was in 2007, but by 2011, the Pizza Hut was already gone. So now the question is, can Go-To Foods do what Yum Brands never could? To answer that, we'll have to dig a little deeper into Auntie Carvel's Jambabon.
Jambabon.
Pretty frequently I'll get comments or DMs that say stuff like, I have a 4-in-1 near me. But when I go to look it up, most of the time what they're referring to is more like a food court inside a gas station, which, don't get me wrong, is still fun, but not quite as pure of an example as a true combination restaurant. But this location, this is about as pure of a combination as they come. First of all, on the outside, you've got signs for all 4 restaurants: Jamba, Annie Ann's, Cinnabon, and then Carvel down here at the bottom. And once you get inside, it's all one area with one shared counter. The branding is pretty uniform, with this wall kind of describing what you're getting from each one, and this accent wall over here to the left. This is something I haven't really seen anywhere else besides IHOpplebee's, which had decorations that used logos from both restaurants. And then above the counter here, you can see the menus for each of the 4 brands. When I went to order, I started by double checking that I could place an order for the food from all 4, and the guy was like, it's one establishment, man, don't worry about it. And internally, I was like, well, that's good news for its status as a combination restaurant, but I'm still a little bit worried about what you'll think when I order a 4-course meal for myself from your establishment. For my first course, I ended up ordering a cup from the Cinnabon display that said center of the roll, although in retrospect, maybe I should have just gotten myself a churro. And then for my main course, I got a smoothie from Jamba called the Strawberry Smiles. For my side, I got a soft pretzel from Annie Ann's with cheese. And then for dessert, I ordered a Carvalanche. This is the equivalent of like a Dairy Queen Blizzard, and I guess for some reason everyone feels the need to name these after a snow-related weather event. I also ordered components for my Frankenstein creation, and I'm embarrassed to say that my order ended up being over $50. The guy ringing me up was the same one I talked to earlier, and he was like, I'm not judging you, but Can I ask why? I kind of tried to explain myself. Typically when I go to restaurants, I don't let people know that I'm reviewing food, not because I'm trying to be deceptive, but just because I don't want to make like a big deal out of it or have the restaurant prep my food any differently than they would for any other customer. But since my food was already mostly prepared, I felt like there wasn't any harm in telling him I was doing a food review. Plus, since the area where I'd be sitting was directly in front of the counter, I figured there wouldn't be any hiding the fact that I was filming the food. We got to talking and I asked him if this was the only location that had all 4, and he said currently yes. Sounds like they might have tried it in one other location, but that closed. When I asked if more were on the way, he said it depends on how well we do, so I guess we'll see. He told me that he'd managed a few different restaurants within the company, so I asked him if it was harder to work here versus a standalone store. And he said not really, partially because the menus for each individual concept were slightly abbreviated. He just said there was a lot more to clean at the end of the day. Alright, before we get to the food itself, I just want to point out how absolutely insane my haul looked. I've rarely felt more self-conscious than I did in this moment. But I went ahead and dug in, starting with my 4-course meal. I'm not 100% sure why someone would get the center of the cinnamon roll instead of the whole thing. Maybe it's kind of like how people sell just the tops of muffins, supposedly the best part, but it's only 50 more cents to get the whole roll here, so I feel like that's a way better deal. The smoothie was solid. I'm typically like a peanut butter banana smoothie type of guy, so I decided to mix things up with the strawberry here. I can't remember the last time I had a hot pretzel with cheese, but this was great. Honestly, hard to imagine someone grabbing one of these before getting on a flight, but the malls and ballparks business model makes sense to me. And then the Carvalanche was probably my favorite of the 4. I think I'm just a sucker for a sweet treat. However, unfortunately, I did fall victim to my arch nemesis, ye old brain freeze, which means that brain freeze is up 2-0 on me at this point. I really need to learn how to eat ice cream slower, like an adult. Alright, for this Frankenstein creation, I had the whole 3-hour drive to come up with a way to combine ingredients from all 4 of these places, and I gotta say, it was not easy. I started with a classic cinnamon roll from Cinnabon, that would be my base, and then I added a peanut butter Nutella acai bowl. I figured the peanut butter and Nutella would go pretty well with the cinnamon and icing, but what I completely forgot is that acai is a berry, and so berry is kind of the prevailing flavor here. And I had looked over the Jamba menu beforehand, and I thought I saw some good options like a waffle bowl, for example, but since all the menus were slightly smaller than they are in standalone stores, they didn't have the waffle bowls here. As I was scooping the acai onto the cinnamon roll, I just felt so overcome with embarrassment at how insane this looked that I tried to kind of turn away so the staff couldn't see me, or at least see what I was doing. Next, I added vanilla soft serve from Carvel. I felt like this would be a pretty unoffensive flavor and just generally a net positive for the dish. And then I topped it off with cinnamon sugar pretzel bites from Annie Ann's. So here it is, this abomination of a meal. Much to my dismay, while I was getting this shot, the manager happened to walk up and he caught me red-handed. He wanted to bring me some of their Annie Ann's mini cinnamon rolls with seasonal toppings to try. And I just want to clarify, I never ask for nor do I get offered free food, but this was super kind of him and I won't let it affect my review of the restaurant. More than anything, I was just mortified at the mess I had made, but after he left, I went ahead and dug in. And as I feared, the berry flavor from the acai felt like it was super out of place. I was worried after the first couple bites that this was going to be inedible, but fortunately, once I got a good chunk of ice cream on my spoon, it honestly wasn't bad at all. I think what helped me appreciate it more was shifting my perspective from a cinnamon roll with acai on top to an acai bowl with ice cream and cinnamon. I don't know why, but that made the berry flavor feel less like a surprise. Also, I realized that I had made a grave error in choosing which container to make this in because the Cinnabon thing was 100% not leak proof. I guess acai and melting ice cream is not the intended use for this container. I did clean everything up, but for a moment there I just felt like a little kid who can't eat ice cream without getting it all over the place. I had trouble coming up with a name for this one, especially since it has 4 different components instead of 3, so we could potentially go with the cinnamon acai pretzel sundae, or perhaps just Dr. Jambabon's monster. I don't know, but safe to say I would not recommend that anyone try to replicate this. Overall, this wasn't a bad experience, but I just think as a combo, this is a good one-stop shop where everyone in the family can just get a little treat that they enjoy. Not necessarily a place where you want to be making your own crossover items. Now, if Go-To Foods makes a crossover product on their end and makes it attractive for people to come try it because it's exclusive to this location, I think that would be a good idea, and I think they could do a much better job than I did. All right, on my way to my final stop, I made a quick detour to pick up my friend Preston, who agreed to come with me even though I didn't tell him where we were going ahead of time.
Where we're going is a combination Buffalo Wild Wings, Dunkin, Baskin Robbins.
In one spot?
In one building. And it's located in Chicago.
Let's go. Let's go. That's amazing.
So-
Dude, I'm fired up. Oh my gosh. Let's go.
Explain that turbulence.
Dude, the flight attendant said it's like some of the craziest turbulence he's ever experienced. I mean, we had cups that were like not even full, and it was difficult to keep the liquid. I mean, I spilled on you at one point. It was crazy.
It was chaos.
Thing turned off at one point. But, I mean, we're here. We made it.
We made it.
So after a long day of travel, we finally made it to our hotel in the suburbs of Chicago, and the next day we made our way to Palatine, Illinois to visit the Buffalo Dunkin' Robbins.
I can't see me loving nobody but
Yes.
I am. 10 dogs.
Dude, my dogs are probably parched, bro.
A few different possibilities for portmanteaus here besides Buffalo Dunkin' Robbins. You could also go Baskin Buffalo Donuts, like, hey, I'm headed over to the BBD, or maybe Dunkin' Robin Wings. I don't know, I think I'll stick with Buffalo Dunkin' Robbins. So as best I can tell, this used to be a Dunkin' Baskin Robbins, and it was recently remodeled to add the Buffalo Wild Wings Go. Buffalo Wild Wings Go differs slightly from a regular Buffalo Wild Wings in that it's takeout only. So maybe not slightly, that's like a pretty significant difference. But I was surprised to find out that the BWWG was almost completely separated from the Dunkin' and Baskin Robbins. They were definitely both in the same building, there's no question about that, but they basically only shared this vestibule here inside the front door. So in terms of my classification system, sadly this is one of the worst examples of a combination restaurant, since they don't have a shared counter, kitchen, or employees. Pretty much immediately when you walk in, you have to decide which one you're going to. Either Buffalo Wild Wings or the Dunkin' Baskin Robbins. To be fair, the Dunkin' and Baskin Robbins are completely integrated, like you can order from the same counter and pay for them in the same transaction. However, if you want chicken wings, that's gonna have to be a separate transaction. If you're curious, there is a drive-thru, but it's just for the Dunkin' Baskin Robbins side of things. It looks like you can't pick up your wings from the drive-thru, even if you order them ahead. Since there was no seating area in the Buffalo Wild Wings, Preston and I decided to go there first and bring our food over to the other side where we could sit and eat. Despite being a limited concept, we were actually pretty impressed with the menu options at Buffalo Wild Wings. We decided to place an order for bone-in wings, which would be the main course of our 3-course meal. And we got a variety of sauces, which I'll tell you about in just a second. We were told it would be about 15 minutes, so we went over to the other side to place our orders there. For our first course, Preston ordered a sweet black pepper bacon sandwich and a vanilla iced coffee, and I got a protein vanilla latte, a cream delight donut, and a wake-up wrap with bacon. And then for dessert, we both got vanilla ice cream from Baskin Robbins. Fortunately, we didn't have to wait long for all of our food to be ready, and I went back to the B-dubs to retrieve our wings. And with those safely in our possession, it was time to start our 3-course meal.
I'm going for it. I'm scared. No, dude, I failed. Here we go.
We dug into our breakfast, and once again, this was pretty comparable to what you'd find at a standalone Dunkin' location. I feel like Dunkin' can safely beat the allegations that they deteriorate in quality once they're part of a combo. And then after our breakfast, we moved on to our lunch item, and the 3 sauces we got were traditional hot, sweet barbecue, and this new flavor called brown sugar heat. We specifically got that one for our Frankenstein creation, but I'll come back to that in a second.
It's so early to be eating buffalo.
I unfortunately have become a little bit of a wing snob, so I would say these were good, not great, but I feel like Buffalo Wild Wings is a reliable middle-of-the-road option. The hot wings took Preston out a little bit.
All right, dude.
I think if I did the blazing challenge, I would die.
Yeah, I mean, if they're sauced like that, for sure.
That's what I'm like, I would die. Dude, if I eat flaming hot Cheetos at 30 years old now, after 7 p.m., death sentence.
But we both really enjoyed the brown sugar heat wings.
This is a fantastic flavor. I don't think I've ever had a flavor wing like this.
That is really good.
That's what I'm saying. Again, I'm all in that guy, but I don't think he described that right.
I don't know if he's had it. They like just opened.
He's like very spicy.
Dude, I would get more of those.
That's
like,
what I'm saying. That's like a
Should we get
delicious.
some to go?
I'm in. Okay, but legitimately, nobody's bothered by us being here. You could spend your entire day here. Roll in, throw the laptop up on the bar, go some coffee, donut, hit lunch, get a sweet
Get
treat in
a
the afternoon,
burger.
get a burger for dinner.
Ice cream cake.
This could be a work from home hack right here.
This guy just went into the door to the Buffalo Wild Wings and then came over here.
Oh, you're doing what we're doing.
I don't know.
He's one of us.
Do you think he placed an order? I think he was maybe just confused.
Finally, we moved on to our vanilla ice cream for dessert. Nothing too crazy here, but that's because things were about to get particularly unhinged.
Oh, wait, dude. You know what time it is?
It's pickle time.
It's pickle time. We gotta get those.
That's good.
After a quick palate cleanser, we moved on to our Frankenstein creation. So my first thought was to basically do what I did at Jimmy John's and order a cookie or a brownie or something from B-dubs, and I actually tried to do that. However, they informed me that they didn't have any in stock, so we had to go back to the drawing board. And this is what we came up with. We started with what was left of our vanilla ice cream from Baskin Robbins and ordered some espresso to pour over it. This is actually a fairly common dessert called affogato, and I'm honestly surprised that Dunkin' Baskin Robbins locations aren't already offering this. So then the problem is, how do you incorporate Buffalo Wild Wings? wings. Enter the brown sugar heat wings. And hear me out here. I know this might look disgusting, but on my quest for the best wings, I've had peanut butter and jelly wings, and those actually weren't bad. In situations like that with sweet flavors, the chicken kind of just acts as like a neutral vessel for the sauces. You're not really getting a whole lot of chicken flavor. I was planning on using the brown sugar heat wing, but Preston suggested that we try both the brown sugar heat and the sweet barbecue, so we both did one of each.
That looks pretty. Put that on the menu. Let's go.
Too much.
It's like soup.
Too much.
Like wing soup.
We both started with the barbecue and dug in not really knowing what to expect, but after the initial shock wore off, we had basically the exact same reaction.
Dude,
I'm not gonna lie. It's not bad.
that's not
It's
bad
not
at all.
bad at all. It's not even like gross.
No?
We're both kind of like, hold on. Did we just make something incredible? Is this how Alexander Graham Bell felt the first time he placed a telephone call?
I'm just now remembering I had wings that were like coffee barbecue one time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are the espresso taste good? The ice cream's not throwing me off?
For whatever reason, this combination actually worked really well for both the brown sugar heat and the sweet barbecue.
I was expecting this to be like nauseating.
Yeah.
And this is actually pretty
I
enjoyable.
could stay here all day.
Should have saved more wings for this.
We should have saved more wings for this. Hear me out. The ice cream makes the wing better. I'm dead serious.
It's like
The,
a sweet,
vanilla.
like a rancher blue cheese, you know?
Yeah.
I think the brown sugar is taking it. You almost talked us out of it.
This wing might be my favorite flavor wing right now on this planet.
After you finish eating the wings, you just get to finish the rest of your affogato. Although if you try this at home, just know that it's slightly off-putting when you find little bits of chicken hidden in the ice cream when you're not expecting it.
There's some chicken remnants in this for sure.
It's got a chunk of something.
That's what I'm saying.
You don't want the giblets at the bottom.
Yeah.
Just a texture I wasn't super accustomed to feeling when I'm eating ice cream, you know? We also tried dipping celery in the affogato since that came with our wings.
No way.
Hear me out.
No way.
Kind of
dude.
refreshing. Hold on. Good.
I don't believe you.
It's not bad. It's like a healthy snack. I love avocado.
This went way better than I was expecting.
After some brief discussion, we settled on calling this the Buffalo Affogato, which honestly sounds way classier than anything we ate in that restaurant. Thankfully, I managed not to get a brain freeze this time, so I was able to prevent a complete shutout in this episode. As good as the Buffalo Affogato ended up being, our tummies felt kind of rumbly afterwards, and we just kind of felt insane in general. One funny thing was that the standard Dunkin trash can wasn't big enough to fit our trash from Buffalo Wild Wings, so it feels like little infrastructure choices like that actively disincentivize you from taking advantage of this combination, not to mention the obvious separation of the two restaurants via a wall. We were able to find an outdoor trash can to put our trash in. Alright, I do want to talk about where I think combination restaurants are headed, but first I'll go ahead and say that the Buffalo Affogato was by far my favorite Frankenstein creation, at least from this episode. You could try the other ones if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. I just feel like the affogato in particular was so unexpectedly good and bizarre that it feels like the perfect representation of the chaotic energy that combo restaurants bring. So what does the future hold for combination restaurants? First of all, I'll say that this will likely be the final chapter to my series on combination restaurants. I think I've said just about all there is to say on the matter, and as I mentioned, I think we're kind of at an inflection point, so just need to kind of wait and see how things play out. You've got Yum Brands quietly euthanizing remaining KFC Taco Bell combos, while brands like Dine, Inspire, and GoTo Foods are actively opening new combos. So who's right? Whose bet is going to pay off? I can't see the future, but I do have some predictions based on data. Since I made my video about the first iHopplebees, they've been opening up more of these restaurants left and right. So yes, I've seen your messages that you have one near you, but I actually emailed them to get the most current info, so here's some data hot off the presses from a primary source at the company. As of March 2026, they have 32 dual-branded Applebee's and IHOP locations in the US, with 9 more under construction. That's explosive growth. And they said based on franchisee interest, they expect 50 additional openings in 2026, which would bring the total to around 80 combos in the US by the end of this year. And if that happens, that would actually eclipse the total number of Taco Huts, which was around 50 at its peak. I speculated that this was a little bit of a Hail Mary for Dine Brands because casual dining restaurants aren't doing so hot in general. And it looks like this could potentially pay off. They say that these locations are outperforming single branded units by 1.5 to 2.5 times the revenue. So when IHOP as a brand is struggling, converting a standalone IHOP location to an iHopplebee's could actually be a pretty smart move, unless it then steals business from the next closest Applebee's location. I do think people are pretty fascinated by these dual branded Applebee's and IHOP locations, so we'll just have to wait and see if they continue to be successful after the novelty kind of wears off in the coming years. Unfortunately, I can't make a sweeping generalization about the other companies because it seems like each one of them is coming at this from a slightly different place. Like for GoTo Foods, it looks like they're trying to find creative ways to survive the death death of the American mall. And honestly, that's pretty smart. Like, I'm sure Auntie Anne's having its own non-mall retail location does not make a ton of sense financially, but since none of these brands take up a ton of space, like putting them all together just works. So if they are going to survive outside of malls, this might be the way to do it. I'm going to tentatively say that this is the right strategy for now, and I think that we might be entering into a renaissance of sorts with combination restaurants. None of these feel as iconic as Can Taco Hut to me, but it's possible that maybe I'm blinded by nostalgia and my love for Taco Bell. So maybe not a second golden age, but perhaps a silver age. I'm a little bit more confused by Inspire Brands because it seems like they're pairing up successful brands with each other. Historically, Yum would try to pair a flagship concept with a less popular concept like a Taco Bell and Long John Silver's. But Dunkin', B-Dubs, and Jimmy John's are three of Inspire's most successful brands, whereas Arby's is kind of struggling. But as far as I know, they're not building any new combinations with Arby's. I just don't know that the Buffalo Dunkin' Robbins or the Jimmy Dunkin' Robbins makes a ton of sense. Like, it's super funny for someone like me, but unless they create some sort of gimmicky crossover item that you can only order at those locations, or really make an effort to combine the branding, I don't see there being much incentive to visit these locations instead of a typical location. The only real benefit is for the company saving on real estate, which, don't get me wrong, isn't insignificant. Also, here's a crazy theory. Are combination restaurants a recession indicator? We saw the boom of Yum combos in the years immediately preceding the 2008 financial crisis as a way to increase revenue in the face of increased real estate costs. And that's kind of what these companies now are telling their franchisees. So could the rise of these combo restaurants be a canary in the coal mine for the economy? I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I have a degree in classical studies and in religion, so not an economist over here. But if the rise and fall of the Yum combos taught us anything, it's that when consumer spending decreases, like during a recession, it's hard for these combos to survive for much longer after that. I appreciate you guys watching to the end of this episode, and if you enjoy deep dives into weird fast food oddities like this one, feel free to hit subscribe down below so we can keep hanging out in the future. If you're someone who's been waiting on merch to restock, I finally launched my new merch store, which has some classics plus some brand new items. You can find that linked in the description. I'll be slowly adding to this lineup over time, so if there's an old design that you want to see relisted, let me know and I can try to make it happen. And I just want to say thanks to Preston for always being down to go on an adventure, even when I don't give him a heads up about where we're going. I'll see you back here in a couple weeks for the next episode of the Studio Review, but until then, just remember that even when it doesn't feel like it, it's going to be okay. I'll see you soon.